and I'm going to start here. And if he starts with the frame here, okay, basically he has his frame, elbows in. What I really want to do is I want to clear that frame, and one of the best ways to clear that frame would be to switch your position. So right now he can push against me because I'm square. I'm sitting on my knees, I'm sitting back on my heels. What I need to do is I need to change so that the direction he's pushing to make the frame is gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a scarf position here. So this hand controls the far side shoulder. So I have like a gable grip here to begin with. I control the far side shoulder, okay? And once I control this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sprawl my right leg, and I'm going to go hip to hip. So I'm here, hip to hip. I always want to be blocking his hip. Okay? If I just sprawl like this, he can shrimp and put his knee across my belly and start recovering his guard. But when I sprawl, if I drop my hip to his hip, if he tries to bring his knee across my belly, that connection stops it. Okay? Now that I'm hip to hip, this foot can come up, and I'm going to scoop up his elbow here. Okay? And I'm going to scoop it up as much as my arm will take it, but you got to remember it's arm versus arm right now. And if it's arm versus arm, there's a good chance that you're not going to be able to pull it away from his body, right? So what I do to clear this arm isn't just keep pulling with my arm. What I do is I put upward pressure with my hand, but then what I do is I walk on my toes and drive my hips under, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scoop up this arm here. So I scoop it up, so I get my hips in his armpit. Now I keep control of his arm, and this knee goes to his ear, and my other knee goes back to his belt. And I'm a lot tighter, even though he's framed with his left arm right now, but I'm a lot tighter position, and this is a much stronger position here. Anytime he frames, okay, I'm going to want to switch to my hip to hip, sprawl and switch, drive my hips in, and actually, let's just stay here for now. We're going to drive and switch to this scarf position. Now notice, in full-on scarf position, I'd step all the way through here. And that's fine. I personally like to kind of stay up on my toes, and I can drive this way. Okay. A lot of times here too is my opportunity to go for my key lock. So we're going to drive in here, and actually let's go for the key lock. So I'm here. If this one's framed across my neck, the way I deal with this one is I bring my hand in, and again, I don't want to go arm to arm. I don't want to just be pushing with my arm. Once I have this, so I've already scooped up this arm, I'm going to kind of drive with my head. So if I get my hand in the middle, I put my head in, and I bring my knee to his ear, and I drive my head to the mat on the far side. Okay, so he's framed. Okay, I'm going to switch to scarf and clear the near side frame. Boom. Drive in. Okay, so see how I'm already catching behind his tricep here? Now's my opportunity to bring my hand in. All I'm going to do is I'm going to drive with my head. And I can drive with my head right now because if he tries to roll me, my head's going to post on the far side. So I'm going to drive all the way across and grab here. And I'm nice and high in the near side armpit. I want to, no thumbs, pin his wrist to the ground. Notice how he's already bridging? That's putting tension on his shoulder. I want this elbow tight to his shoulder and this one to grab over your own wrist. If you want to add more pressure, you turn your wrists up. Keep your weight on top of his wrist, keep his wrist pinned to the mat, and now I lift his elbow and slide his hand backwards on the mat. So like they call it a paintbrush sometimes. So if he's framed, okay, I'm going to switch to that scarf to clear the near side. So I'm here, hip to hip, drive my hips here, and this is my opportunity to go to that wrist. And again, I'm pushing with the weight of my body, not just with my arm, right? I want to keep basically my head or my chest close to my hand all the way to the mat. So look at, I'm driving, and my head goes on top, and I figure four. No thumbs. If you start with thumbs, that's okay. Take the thumbs out once you get here. Keep the pressure down on his hand. Keep it pinned. I see people do it like this, but the tension comes off of his shoulder when the hand comes off the mat. This elbow's tight to his shoulder. My head's on top of my hands. Now I elevate his elbow and slide his hand backwards parallel to his body. So the thing with the key lock is it's not super high percentage. It's it's one of the first submissions that people teach from side control. It really works best if you're stronger or bigger than your opponent. Okay. But what we're using it for in this situation is actually to clear the frame. Okay? Because even if you're smaller, if you threaten it, they're going to have to get out of it. And that's where the stronger person can overpower the arm and force it anyway. But if they don't do it, you still can finish a bigger person if they don't resist it, right? If they resist it and they clear it, now you've cleared the far side frame as well. So he's here. Okay, the near side frame I'm going to clear by switching to my scarf position here. So hip to hip, driving my hips, I've cleared that frame, right? He can't push with his elbow here. I'm going to clear this one because as I go for this, he's going to straighten his arm. Boom. Now, I put my head down, and now I'm in a side control where he doesn't have any frames. That's what I was looking for. If he tries to bring his left arm back into a frame and I keep my head tight, he's actually putting himself back in danger of that key lock. Okay? So I'm nice and tight now. Your head has to stop it. If I hang out like this, all my kids' class do this. They don't like to like lay on each other. But that just lets people push on them. Okay? So it's again, I'm here. When I push and he clears out, I take away the space with my head, and now I can come back on my knees and I have a side control without his frames in. I can put a lot more pressure on him this way as well. If you want good pressure, make sure your elbow is all the way behind their neck, and then you can shrug your shoulder. Don't drive with your entire body. If you want pressure, you pull them underneath you and shrug your shoulder. Okay? So you've cleared the frame by going for that key lock. Okay? I'm going to control the far side shoulder. I like to hook under his shoulder here. Okay? And when I'm doing this, I'm going to use my elbow to keep his arm on this side of my head. Okay? Once I have his far side shoulder here, I'm going to walk my knees back a little bit. I'm going to put my hand on the mat, and I'm going to bring this elbow in front and pull. So if he's on his side, I'm bringing this hand over here. I'm holding his shoulder. My elbow comes into his ribs. See how I hold that up and over? That's also going to make it hard for him to bring, as long as I keep my head forward, for him to bring his arm to the other side of my head. His left arm. It's stuck there. Now I'm going to walk him up until he's completely on his side. Even maybe slightly belly down. Okay? Because what that does is I'm going to be trying to step over his head. If he's maybe flatter. If he's here and I try to step over his head, he can reach. If he's here and I try to step over his head, he can't reach very far. Okay? I'm going to step all the way over, and I want my foot not connected to his back, but kind of, you have your shoulder blades here, kind of midway between his belt and his shoulders, and about 6 inches away from his body. So I'm going to step over here, just like this. Oh, maybe a little less. Okay? Now, this end is going to go to the mat. I'm going to turn, and I'm going to sit on my own heel. Now I turn and face him, pinch my knees together, and hug the arm bar. Okay? I don't bring this arm across his body unless he's defending. If I went for it and he's grabbing his hands together, now if I have to fight the grip, I'll bring this one over. Okay? So he's framed up. I'm going to clear his frames. Hip, control the arm, driving to his armpit here. Attack this one. When he switches, I block it with my head. Here. Look I'm going to grab this far side shoulder. Put this hand on the mat. I'm going to bring my left elbow up and over. So from the ground to over, but I keep this behind his shoulder. That's already pulling him on his side. I can walk my knees backwards now to get him more, and I push his head down. I'm going to step over, midway between shoulder blade, or shoulders and belt. And now this hand is going to go to the mat, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot so that my butt goes to my own heel. Here, pivot, and now I turn him facing. I pinch my knee tight into his armpit, and I hug his arm, pinching my knees together. Framed, here, clearing the frames. So scarf first, here, attacking this one, here. Good, I already have his shoulder. Might as well keep it. I'm going to come on my knees, and my left elbow in this situation is going to go up and over his ribs. I can walk my knees backwards now, and I'm going to push his head. I'm going to step midway between his belt and his shoulders, and not connected. I'm going to have to give myself space for his back to go flat again when I do the armbar. I'm stepping over. I like to put this hand on the mat, and then all I'm doing is I'm pivoting my butt to my own heel. And turning and facing it. Pinching my knees together. I'm a big fan of only moving if I have to. Every time you move, you give your opponent an opportunity to escape. There's always a window to escape. So the less often I have to move my arms, or re-grip, or change, the less opportunities he has to escape. Okay? So I'm already hugging his far side shoulder, okay, with my left hand. So I want you to kind of pay attention to that right now. Okay, I'm going to pull him on his side, just like we did. Boom, I'm here, I'm pushing, I'm still hugging here. I step over, I'm still hugging here. This hand is the one that I'm going to post on. Now all I do is I drive my butt to my heel and I pivot. Boom, I'm still hugging. Look at it. As I'm turning, this one's going to slide up to my own shoulder. I want to catch his arm in the crook of my elbow. This is the strongest position for finishing arm bars because this is my back versus his arm. I'm finishing with my back. Okay. This forearm across is not as strong. And it allows more movement of his arm. As I roll back, he can turn his thumb down. He can do a number of other things. If I'm wedging it in the V of my elbow, it's harder for him to turn because it's going to slide. As I'm leaning back, that V is sliding up towards his wrist. Okay, so it's pinching this elbow down and hugging here. Now, the other hand, if I want, I can grab or hook under his thumb. So for instance, if he grabs his hands together, I will make a V here, grab my own shoulder, and this one will hook his wrist to break the grip. Okay, but I don't switch to this. In this moment where I'm switching here, he can pull his arm free, and now he can do a number of other things or just make it difficult. I'll have to scoop it back up again. Once I was hugging with that left arm all the way through the movement, and I bring it to a tighter hug when I sit. Okay? It's here. If I need to turn his thumb, if he's trying to do like a hitchhiker escape, I can use this hand. Keep his thumb facing up. But I'm going to let this V slide up the arm. This is the strongest. Here is strong. It's 2-on-1, but your two arms aren't as strong as your back. So you get a guy like Encima, whose one arm is stronger than both of yours combined. Probably if you had 3 arms, you couldn't armbar him. But if you engage your back as well, it's going to be way harder for him. Even though Encima might be, his arm might be strong enough to destroy my back. I don't know. Very likely. But you're trying to get as much mechanical advantage as possible. If you want the strongest position on armbar, it's always hugging the arm and using your back, not grabbing the wrist with your hands. And then also conservation of movement. I was hugging his arm all the way through with my left arm, and I never moved it, right? It just hugged tighter as I was. A lot of times when I'm here, as I'm transitioning, I'll grab my collar up by my neck. I don't like grabbing down here because I'm not trying to catch his arm with my forearm. I'm trying to catch it in the V between my bicep and my forearm. I'm just pinching it down towards my body, but I also don't want to go so tight that it doesn't slide. I want it to slide. I'm keeping downward pressure, but I want it to slide up to his wrist as I lean back. If it's tight and your knees are tight, he's tapping before my back hits the mat. But the higher his elbow is on your belly, the tighter the arm bar is going to be. The more my hips are back here, the harder it's going to be to finish.
That's why you gotta keep it tight from the beginning. Like
Also, that's when you get the pressure on the groin that you don't want, right? Because if I'm up here, all of my hips, the fulcrum point is higher, so you're not pulling in to your own groin, right? But if I'm not tight enough, let's say it's looser here, and a lot of times that's when you have it like this, then once your back hits the mat, then you start extending like a bridge. But if everything's tight, if I have this tight and my elbow's tight, my shoulders never hit the ground. It's all ready. Now, if I wanted, someone just posted Danaher talking about breaking power. Like you want your techniques to have the ability not just to threaten, but to actually break a limb. Well, look he was tapping when it was extended. My shoulders weren't even on the mat. If I wanted to bridge explosively, I'd break his elbow at that point. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
She came under the situation where you have side control and you have their frames cleared, but they're just hugging and holding you tight, right? So if have everything cleared here, but he's just trying to hold on to me, that's fine. I can still do the same arm bar, but sometimes you're having trouble like getting that arm straight, right? So what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to control his shoulder, hand across. I'm going to get my elbow in front of his ribs and walk him over. Okay, at this point, this is where it's like, oh, he's holding on tight. What I do is I frame and I grab my hands together. Now I use my back. Once I'm here, now I carry on with the arm bar. Once I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and finish my arm bar. Boom, boom. If you get here and you see how my knees kind of sideways, I'll put my hand on the mat and I'll scoop my butt one more time. The closer I can get my hips to his hips, the harder it's going to be for him to escape as well. We're going to start, so last time we started with them already framed up, and that's what we were talking about during the warm-up, Monty, with their arm. You're framing with your elbows, with the structure of your body, not pushing them away. You keep the space with your frame. So here, his elbows are in, and this makes it easier for him to make space and shrimp. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to handle this frame a little differently today than we did on Wednesday. Today what we're going to do is we're still going to attack kind of a far side armbar, but we're also going to attack a Kimura here. So from here, if he's framed across my neck like he is right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the arm that's under his neck and I'm going to come over and under his wrist here. Okay. My other hand, I'm going to go ahead and block his hips. So I'm going to come from this side to this side. I'm just going to put it on the mat to block his hips. Okay, now that I have his hips blocked with my left hand, I can sprawl, and he can't shrimp and put me back in the guard, right? If I'm here and I sprawl, I'm giving him space. He doesn't have to shrimp as far. Now he can bring his knee across my belly, okay? So I'm bringing this hand to block the hips, and I'm going to sprawl my weight on the near side arm. That's how I'm dealing with that frame that's on my hip. Okay. Now, once I'm here, I'm going to take this arm and I'm going to scoop under his elbow and put it on his on his body. And now I'm going to start circling over his head. And as I circle, I'm going to walk this hand further across. Once I come above his head and he's starting to come up on his side, no, you're fine. You're already coming up on your side. I'm going to bring my knee over his bicep if I can. If not, if it's tucked in, I'm just going to bring it close. And I'm going to bring the other knee behind his back. And look I'm going to drive my head forward until he exposes his wrist. Okay, now that it exposed his wrist, I grab his wrist and I grab my own wrist. I want to pinch my knees on his back. You can be up on one toe, you can be up on either one, but the idea is you want to pinch your knees to control his body. I see a lot of people go for Kimuras here with their knees apart, and that gives them room to move. Okay, so again, I was kind of here, I came around. Okay, I'm going to expose the wrist by driving forward and grabbing it as it comes. I want to pinch his chest and pinch his back between my knees. The other thing I'm going to do is once I grab here, this one's going to come and grab my own wrist. I'm going to pinch my elbows into my body and hug his elbow close to my chest. Now, see how he could grab his belt and stuff here? What I really want is I want to catch him so that that doesn't happen. So what I do is I basically sit back on his head and sit away from him. So there's nothing for him to grab. My elbows are in, and to finish, I keep my knees pinched, and I rotate at the hips. I'm not pushing with my arms. Okay? Now, if he does grab his belt, I still want to bring my chest to the back of his elbow, but sometimes it's hard. He usually will grab the front of his body to finish the Kimura here. What I want to do is I want to break that grip, and the way I break that grip is I twist with my hips again, the opposite direction of his grip. Once I break it, I sit up so that he can't grab it again, and then I turn to finish the Kimura. Frame here. Okay. Last time we got his arm to this side of our neck. If we can get it to this side, then we can set up that arm bar that we did on Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
But he's still framed here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this one under his wrist and over his bicep. And this one blocks his hip. Left hand goes to block his hip where my knee was blocking his hip before, correct? Now I'm going to sprawl on the near side arm, putting pressure on it. That's how I get past it. If I try to walk over his head from here without putting pressure on his arm, he's just going to block my hips. See? So what I need to do is, he's framed right here. I need to drop my weight on his elbow, get it to the ground. Now look at when I don't get back up to walk over his head either. I drop my weight and I just keep pressuring it down until I get past it. Okay. And now this hand is scooping up, and now I can come up on my knees and look at, by driving that arm over, it gets him on his side. I can bring my knee over his bicep. I really like that if I can. I'm going to expose his wrist by driving forward and grab his wrist. Pinch your elbows into your body. Try to pull his elbow close to your sternum. If he grabs his belt or his pants or just puts his hand in front of his belly, twist this way, sit upright. You do it with your back, and then turn at the waist, pinching your knees together. Here, I'm setting all of this up the same. I'm hugging all the way to his elbow. I'm blocking his hip. I'm sprawling on his arm. I'm hooking under his elbow, and I'm circling here. Once I'm above his arm, I'm going to drive. See how when I'm driving, what's happening? I'm kind of shrugging my shoulder into his forearm. That's what exposes. Try to keep your arm on this side of my head. Yeah. So I'm hooked right at his elbow. Like I was telling you, Monty, you got to hook that. But what I'm doing is I'm pushing my body forward. I'm shrugging my shoulder. He gives it to me at that point. Okay, so now I'm up here in this Kimura position. Okay. He's going to go ahead and grab deep across his belly. I didn't quite get it away from his belly, and it's going to be, sometimes even this can be difficult. So what I'm going to do is I am going to step up on my right leg, which is the one behind his back, boom, and then I'm going to turn and sit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep pushing his wrist with my figure four into his belly. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to pivot up, and I'm going to sit down, but I don't want him to come with me, and don't fall to my back. I'm going to sit my butt to the mat. If I fall all the way backwards, it gives him momentum to come on. Now that I'm here, I'm going to keep this one tight over his head, and I'm going to lean a little bit to my left so that I can bring my leg across his body. Okay. Now I'm in position to attack the arm bar. Okay. But he's already got grips, and he'll probably grab with both hands. Okay. So how do we break the grips on this arm bar? A lot of times you hear and then you start pulling like this. Okay. What I like to do is I still have my figure 4. I'm going to kind of wiggle so that he's a little bit flatter on the mat, and I'm going to bring my own chest to his elbow. And I'm going to be hugging his elbow super tight. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pressure his wrist down. So I'm going to be pulling down on his wrist, so it's almost folding his elbow over my arm. It's kind of an uncomfortable position for him, right? So I'm pulling that down. My chest is on his elbow. I'm going to pinch my knees, and everything's tight. My elbows are tight to my body. Now look at, I'm pinching here. I'm going to use my back against his shoulder. Right? So if he's grabbing here, as long as I can, if I'm pulling here, it's all arms. But if I lock everything in, my elbow's close to my body here, it's my legs are pinched, and it's my lower back pushing. It's going to be hard for him to hold on. Now, if he's still holding on to his hand, which they do a lot here, that's okay. Remember how we talked last time about hugging with the elbow? What I'm going to do here is the one that's under his elbow is going to reach all the way through so that now his arm is in that V, right? And this one is going to hook under his wrist. So this one stays here, this one pulls, and I let that V slide up to his wrist as I go back. So I'm here, I already got past all of the other, but he's grabbing super deep, and I don't really have, I'm having a hard time clearing that arm for the Kimura. So again, I'm going to step up, and I'm going to pivot. I'm going to sit down. If I need to wiggle my butt backwards to flatten his shoulders a little bit, I do, but the whole time I've been sitting, I don't fall to my back. I'm pushing his wrist into his body so that he doesn't turn into me. Now I can bring my leg over his body. Okay, he's defending now. So I bring my chest to his elbow. I pinch my elbows tight to my body. I pinch my knees together, and I use my lower back to pull. Once I get to here, this arm comes all the way through, so his arm's caught in the V. This one hooks the wrist, and I slide up his arm. I'm breaking this grip here, but he grabs his hands together, right? So a lot of people start pulling like this, but that doesn't do it, right? So this one, again, I want to do all the work with my back. So I bring this one here. And again, even here, he can keep his hands together because this is the direction that grip is strongest. But the minute I take it in a different direction, or even like Dion was doing, in a direction this grip is best in one direction, right? So if I catch it in any other direction, right, it's gonna break easier. Now, what I was telling you is I don't like putting this here because right now the point of this leg is to stay heavy over his head. It's to stop him from sitting up. If I use him light here, that helps him put weight, right? In fact, let's say even if I'm here, if he starts to kick up like he did, go ahead, what stops him is extending this leg. And if that leg's not on his head at all, that's going to be much longer till I can get it to a place where I can stop it, right? And especially because I have the figure 4. Now, if I was here, and this hand was on the mat, I could probably get away with it. I still don't like it. Right? Because now, if this hand's on the mat, I can stop him from kicking up with that hand there. But here, I don't really like that. Okay. Now, if he wanted to keep his elbow bent now, just kind of hug him around. As I circle around, I can get him on his side. And there is some pressure to get it over. But what I like, go ahead and grab a chunk of gi behind my neck, or closer to my neck, because if you're lower, it's going to. This can be, if I'm pushing here, it's going to be hard to get to that wrist, okay? So look because of where my arm is, in his armpit, I don't really have the pressure to get his hand off the back of my neck. But look if I go to his elbow, okay? So yeah, down here, if he's grabbing behind my neck, it's gonna be even sitting up, this is where you start reaching like this. I stay low, this goes right at his elbow. See how I'm pinching there? I put it on his belly, and now I drive my head forward and I shrug. I'm going here. I'm driving across. Now look at, again, if I'm in his armpit and he grabs like a chunk of heat right behind my neck, like even higher, closer to my collar. Yeah. This is where I'm trying to get that clear. But look at, I just moved to the elbow, right? Right in that spot between the bony part of the elbow and the tricep, where the tricep muscle really is strong. Go there, I put it here, I drive forward. It's a hard one for me to teach because it's something I do a lot, but it's like, how do you show exactly that? And this is for other techniques. If I will, anytime I go for a figure four, I want my arm right in that sweet spot on the elbow. I don't like Kimuras like this. I like Kimuras like this because what happens is people straighten out of Kimuras, straighten your arm, I have a straight arm lock. But if I'm down here and you straighten out of the Kimura, it takes adjustment to get to that arm lock. So finding that arm, that's your fulcrum point. That's your break thing, and that's the fulcrum over which you're going to break their elbow on a Kimura position or any figure four position. So always hugging right at the elbow. The other thing it does, let's say I'm here and I'm trying to control this far side one. If I'm here, I take away the only joint he can move around now is his elbow. Like he can move his forearm, I guess his wrist too. But that's as far as if I'm up here, he can like swim his arm to all sides, you know. So basically I'm immobilizing the shoulder in a way. I'm taking the shoulder out of the equation when I control at the elbow.